Hi, normally on this channel I talk about the technology behind escape room games, but I know that many of you are interested in games and puzzles in general, and as this is part of my advent calendar for 2019, I thought I'd share with you some gift ideas for Christmas of escape room related products, which certainly I like and hopefully you might be interested in, or maybe if you know someone that's into escape room puzzles and games and you're looking for an idea for a present for them, maybe they'd like one as well. So to start with, I wanted to look at some books. Books are always great Christmas gifts, and the most well-known escape room related book is probably this. This is Journal 29. It was originally published as a Kickstarter, but is subsequently, I think, available as a general online shopfront. It contains about 70 odd pages of puzzles, some of which are kind of optical illusions, some of them logical, some of them are riddles. It provides good few days of entertainment. It's pretty good value. The downside is it does require an internet connection, so it's no good to take on holiday to anywhere where you're not going to have internet. That's the only thing I'd say about that. It has a sequel, Journal 29 Revelation, and there's also a couple of kind of very copycat derivative products like these. I don't particularly recommend any of those, to be honest. They're not as good as the original, and I found them to be the puzzles less well developed and generally to contain more errors, which in a puzzle book is a pretty serious problem in my opinion. If you're looking for something a little bit more kind of logic puzzly, the Librarian's Almanac is something which I got for Christmas last year and provided a good solid few days entertainment for the whole family. What's quite nice about this is that the puzzles are more involved, I guess. You're going to have to be constructing things, you're going to have to be doing physical things that require a bit of space to lay out. So though it's sold in the format of a book, it actually can involve several people. We had, like I say, the family round doing puzzles together, and that makes it a really good choice for Christmas present, I'd say. That also has a sequel, which is called The Conjurer's Almanac. This is more like the Journal 29 style, I would say, in that it is more of an individual solve the puzzles for one reader at a time. There's quite a lot of content there and it will keep you busy for a while, but it's not such a great kind of Christmas activity for the family, I would say. If you wanted something that was a bit more traditionally book novel-like, this is S, or The Ship of Theseus. This is really hard to explain. So this is a novel, a fairly chunky hardback novel, that also comes with a number of artifacts, photocopies, newspaper clippings, maps, things like that. And it's really hard to explain. Essentially, you can look up guides of what it is, but it is a full novel, but it also contains a conversation between previous readers of the novel that have left notes that you can interpret. It has ciphers and codes, and it's quite intriguing, and it's got a lot of stuff going on. It's not an easy read, I'll say. If you want to get into it properly, there's many levels and it can keep you busy for a long time. It's probably not for everyone, but if you want something a little bit more heavyweight perhaps, that is also something I recommend on the book front. Now, board games are always popular at Christmas time as well, and there are many escape room and puzzle themed board games as well. Perhaps the most popular series are the Exit series of games that come in small boxes like this, and also the Unlock series of games, which certainly here in the UK are sold in trilogy boxes. You get 3 individual games in one box. They're quite similar, both of these series. Some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. The best way I could describe these is probably of variable quality. Some of them we've had a really good evening. We tend to sort of invite friends round, have a meal and then play a game, and they've been really great. Other ones have been frustrating and disappointing and kind of... and the problem is with all of them, because you can only play them once, if you have that bad experience, that's kind of sort of it for the game. You can't go back and play it again and hope for a better time next time. So what I would say is go to a site like Board Game Geek or something like that and check up the ratings of the individual scenarios to find out which ones are highest rated. For us personally, we liked this one, The Wizard of Oz. We did like this one as well, which is a recurring characters called Squeak and Sausage that appear in a couple of scenarios. The Wild West one wasn't for us particularly. But they're quite good. The main advantage of these is they're really easy to pick up in most high street shops. There's some alternatives as well. Escape Room in a Box, the Werewolf Experiment. This was probably the first, certainly the first widely available escape room at home game, and actually it still holds up pretty well. This is the Kickstarter edition, but you can get this on the high street as well. There's a sequel called Flashback as well from the same company, and they're pretty solid choices. Again, it's a good evening's entertainment if you go, have some friends round and play the game afterwards. It's probably an hour or two, I would say, it will keep you busy for, but you can make an evening of it by kind of having themed food. Now, there's also a few more independent choices. So this is my favourite. This came out last year. I think it's made by a Polish company, I believe. There's also a new sequel from the same game as well. And this is sort of a cross between a board game and an escape room game, in that, unlike all the other games, all the other games there basically are a series of puzzles you have to work through in order. This one you actually have to make decisions as to explore and which puzzles you can encounter. So it's got a degree of replayability. You won't experience all the content in just one playthrough, which you will with all of the other games I just showed. The theme is a bit supernatural. It's not necessarily for everyone. You might be put off by the theme, but in terms of a engaging narrative experience, for us personally in our group, that was quite a significant distance ahead of the others in terms of how engaged we felt in the story, and it had some pretty good puzzles as well. And there's kind of other one-offs as well. This was one I got off Amazon. It's just sort of A4 sheets of paper and puzzles, but actually that was pretty good fun, and it's cheaper than the others as well. With all of the board games, I would say, although some of them say for sort of 2 to 6 players, we have enjoyed them all with fewer players. I would say no more than 4 with most of those, because even this one's got fairly large A4 kind of cards in it, but you can still really comfortably only get 2 people looking at a particular puzzle at once, and they're mostly linear in gameplay as well, so you can't look at later puzzles until you've solved the early ones. With things like the exit and the unlock ones, you're actually looking at cards, like sort of nearly playing card style, so you can't get a lot of people all involved at the same time. So small numbers of people, 2 to 4 players I would say with the majority of those games. If you wanted to something that was going to engage more players than that, you might want to look at something like one of the puzzled pint sheets or something like that, which I'll put a link to later as well. Another possible present choice is to take out a subscription, wow that's noisy, to games like Escape the Crate. There's one called Hunter Killer. I've got one here which is The Tales of Ord by Post Curious. And what these generally do is they post you a new game or puzzle or series of scenarios every month or every other month. Now, I'm in the UK, obviously. Most of these are produced by US creators and publishers, so I have to pay extra postage to import them. And I have to be totally honest, on behalf of a UK player, I don't feel like they're worth the money that is cost to send them here. Similar to Unlock and Escape, they provide maybe 1 or 2 hours of entertainment, but you're looking at paying £30 to £40, sometimes more by the time you pay import charges as well. The components are normally paper. For me, I wouldn't say they're worth it. The only one, and again, speaking as a UK person, I would consider, but possibly anywhere else as well, this is a Cryptogram Puzzle Post. And this is produced, this is just a beautiful piece of art. So you create, it's a story, it's a narrative story that has kind of puzzle elements, and it's delivered in these absolutely beautiful hand-drawn artistic envelopes. There is a Patreon to create the supporter of these called Jack Fallows, and this is just a nice thing to receive in your letterbox. The actual puzzle content and the game content is less than the other things. It's more like more of an arty thing, I guess. But I just think it's a nice item to have, so it's worth considering. This is made in the UK though, so if you're watching this in the US or abroad, perhaps you'll have the opposite problem with getting the postage on those. I'm not sure. And then there are a whole series of escape room and puzzle video games and apps you can get as well. So the most famous of these is probably the Room series of games. I think there's 4 or maybe 5 games in the series now. It's an award-winning series of games. It's available on iPad and mobile and PC as well. And it's just got lovely, intriguing puzzle mechanics. It's like a virtual puzzle box, basically. You slide things and attach things and things happen. It's just got lovely interactions, very nicely made. So check out The Room. Also on mobile devices, you've got the Rusty Lake series of games. They're slightly surreal in story time, but otherwise a pretty solid escape room puzzle related apps. There's also the Haiku Adventure Escape series, which have all got different kind of stories. There's a nice one set in sort of World War II escape, and they have a nice series of puzzles as well. Many of them are free, I think, so they're always good to look at as well. If you have virtual reality hardware available, so an Oculus Rift or an Oculus Quest perhaps, I really recommend looking at I Expect You to Die. This is a very funny kind of James Bond parody kind of game. So you're put into a series of scenarios where you sort of have a death-defying, contraption that you have to disarm or something like that. It's very funny. It's got some lovely puzzle mechanics as well. That's a lot of fun. There's also a beautiful game called A Fisherman's Tale, where the puzzle mechanic uses kind of elements of scale and perspective that are only really possible in a game rather than in a real life escape room game. But it's beautiful, and it's got some lovely voice acting and a story as well to go with it as well. So A Fisherman's Tale is really good. Finally, there's just a few other ideas of things which don't really fit into any other category I mentioned. There is an audio-only escape room podcast called Escape This Podcast. And they've recently started, the same two people that run that, Danny and Bill, have also started something called Solve This Murder. These are, like I say, they're podcasts. It's an audio-only kind of escape room. You can listen to them online, but they have a Patreon account as well. So you can listen to some, see if you like it, and if you do like it, support them by taking out a Patreon subscription. And they're, something a bit different to listen to in the car. I listen to them when I'm walking the dog. That's always quite fun as well. And finally, I mentioned Puzzled Pint earlier as well. So in my family, Christmas meal, we all get together, and traditionally I've always written a bit of a quiz or a puzzle that we all sit down and do at Christmas time together while we're waiting for Christmas dinner to be served, basically. And but if you haven't got the time to do that yourself, and I don't always, I really do suggest go to puzzledpint.com. Puzzled Pint is a monthly event that takes place all over the world in different pubs, and they make an archive of all their previous puzzles available under a Creative Commons by attribution license, so you can download them, print them out. They've got all different themed ones, from Alice in Wonderland to Sherlock Holmes to the Muppets to Friends to A Nightmare Before Christmas. There's all these kind of cult topics and themes, so you're bound to find one that interests you. And print them out, leave them on the place settings to your guests at the table, and they're very accessible puzzles. They're not difficult, but they've got some really nice moments. It's totally free, and if you have a Puzzle Pint event running in your city as well, do go along and support them sort of in person as well, because that's really what the event is about. It's a social gathering of people coming together to do puzzles, but you can do them at home as well. And that's what I hope your Christmas will be. I don't want this to be like a really materialistic post and telling people you should go out and buy this thing that you don't want. It's about playing games at Christmas time with your family, which is how I've always grown up. And hopefully that's given you some ideas of things that will let you do that.